Okay. Let us continue. Crystal, a tea party with my older sister. A short story that takes place after the Hartspiel concert in Part 3, Volume 1. I think this is something I've already read before as well. I think it was in one of the other books. After witnessing the grand event with her own eyes, Christelle, a background man noble in Ehrenfest, recounts the experience to her elder sister, who hadn't been able to attend due to being married to a noble from the Veronica faction. Author's note: I put the story together after 3 years of writing Bookworm as a thank you to my readers. It describes the changes Ehrenfest is going through from the perspective of a less important noble, something that is often difficult to fit into the main story. Last summer, my older sister married a noble of the Veronica faction. She had just recently returned to our home estate, having received permission from her husband to spend a few days with her family, and now I was about to have a tea party with her for the first time in quite a while. One sees one's family much less often after marriage, and since outside tea parties are focused more on socializing with others than spending time with one's family, there have been no opportunities for my sister and me to have a private discussion. I was consequently rather pleased that we were having a tea party with just the two of us. I took the first sip of tea as was common etiquette. My sister shortly followed suit, albeit with a great deal more grace than when she had previously lived with us. She then got straight to the point. So, Crystal, just what manner of tea party was that Hartspiel assembly everyone has been speaking about? You and Mother attended, correct? We did. It was positively splendid. As I am sure you have heard, the songs Lord Ferdinand played were simply marvelous. His voice had such richness that it was impossible not to be completely enraptured. There was no doubting that a princess once sent him an invitation to play. I had attended the Royal Academy with Lady Christine, and while her playing was certainly impressive, I could not help but prefer Lord Ferdinand's. I closed my eyes and reveled in the memory, only for my sister to interrupt it in a faintly impatient tone. Please do describe what manner of gathering it was, the event that has been brought up at every single tea party I've attended since. She hadn't been able to attend herself since her husband in the form of Veronica faction, had not given his permission. But the Hartspiel assembly would no doubt continue to be the topic of discussion at all tea parties for quite some time. I sighed. Your husband is a member of the Veronica faction, so you cannot change your allegiance as easily as us neutral nobles. Your timing truly was unfortunate. To think Lady Veronica would be detained not even a year after your marriage. Had she waited just one more year, the political shift in power would have allowed her to cancel her engagement. Divorces, on the other hand, were viewed much more negatively within noble society, and yet Justice was able to get one. I guess it has to be, consensual for both parties in order to do divorce, but whatever. That said, my sister was a little too old to be looking for a new partner in any case. I resolved to marry a noble from the Veronica faction 2 years ago when the rumors of Lady Veronica preparing for Lord Wolfrey's baptism began to spread. It seemed certain that she would maintain an iron grip on her authority for years to come, but I suppose nothing ever goes the way one wishes. I suspect the goddess of time was involved. It is the fault of Ob Ehrenfest, I must admit. His Hartspiel performance was splendid as well, but he is the one who ruined you and your families. Your and our families. I was highly displeased with the Ob, though. I could only speak ill of him in private family discussions such as this. Lord Sylvester had refused to take a second wife, no matter how many times Lady Veronica ordered it, instead devoting himself entirely to Lady Florencia. This had resulted in many nobles thinking Lady Veronica's power would wane when he became Ob. That had not been the case, however. Nothing had changed when he came to power. Lord Ferdinand was sent to the temple despite having achieved the highest grades in the Royal Academy, and the Archducal family was surrounded at all times by sycophants of the Veronica faction. For these reasons, the neutral nobles who carefully eyed the balance of power had steadily begun to favor Lady Veronica. When Lord Sylvester and Lady Florencia were entrusting the upbringing of their child to Lady Veronica, who could be blamed for thinking her power was set in stone, I remarked. Indeed, that is why I asked Father for his permission to marry a noble from the Veronica faction. After my sister's marriage last year, I was instructed to look for a husband from the Veronica faction as well. I was also told to avoid getting close to Lies-Gang nobles in the Royal Academy, as our family shifted from being neutral to supporting the Veronica faction, and yet to think the balance of power would completely flip overnight. Ob Ehrenfest had suddenly arrested Lady Veronica at the end of spring. He had shown her nothing but obedience for so many years prior, so nobody had expected it in the slightest. Under normal circumstances, one could plan ahead a tremendous amount before arresting the mother of an Ob, but there was no sign that this had been the case here. The political waters had been quiet and still, with none of the usual ripples. My husband told me that not even his retainers or any of the high-ranking nobles who accompanied him to the Archduke conference knew about his plans. It all came much too suddenly. What in the world was going through the Ob's mind? My sister complained as we both sipped our tea. If the Ob had planned to get rid of Lady Veronica all this time, I would have rather he made it more apparent so that we could prepare accordingly. If he had made it more apparent This would have tipped off Veronica, possibly, and she could have covered her tracks. Do you not realize that tipping people off could make waves and get back to the person you're trying to avoid? The Ob's thoughts are beyond me, but we do know he promptly adopted Lady Avara's daughter, a girl who was the subject of much scorn from Lady Veronica. We can imagine the Lice Gang nobles will start receiving more favor now. Indeed, had Lady Veronica been in power, the Ob would never have been allowed to adopt one of Lady Avara's daughters, no matter how much Ehrenfest needs her mana. The Ob adopting Lady Rosemary was a symbolic gesture that he would favor Lice Gang nobles moving forward. Not really. He had surely made this move so that he would not have to take a wife other than Lady Florencia. Cristel, my husband, is so taken by the Veronica faction that I fear the other nobles will soon leave him behind. In fact, he still refuses to accept that the balance of power has shifted at all. Just as few Lice Gang nobles had expressed their obedience to Lady Veronica, few members of the Veronica faction were submitting to this abrupt change. I understand your fears, dear sister, but I imagine the Ob will strive not to eliminate members of the Veronica faction, but to absorb them into the Lice Gang fold instead. Many members of the Veronica faction were present during the Hearthbill assembly, and the majority of those among his retainers are likewise the Veronica faction. We cannot distance them all over mere faction politics. We'll see about that. Nobles of the Veronica faction were present all throughout Ehrenfest's upper power structures. It was not possible to suddenly eliminate them all without putting the daily operations and management of the duchy into complete jeopardy. Foreshadowing! That would be ideal, but he is the man who imprisoned his mother overnight without so much as a warning to his retainers. It is hard to imagine he will give much thought to the position we or our futures have been thrust into. Our house was neutral to begin with, so it was possible for us to lean toward either faction depending on our next actions. Now that my sister had married a noble from the Veronica faction, however, this would not be easy for her unless her husband changed his mind as well. Will you be marrying a Lice Gang noble, Crystal? I believe so. Father says it is essential for us to return to neutrality. That's why I was allowed to attend the Hearthbill assembly after all. Father had gone as white as a sheet when he found out Lady Veronica had been imprisoned, considering that we had so recently leaned toward her faction. From that point onward, he began spending his days thinking only of a way for us to turn back to the now dominating Lady Florencia faction. The nobility was thankfully still in a panic, which gave us a prime opportunity to shift ourselves back to the primary power. My marriage would play a significant role in this. Your final term at the Royal Academy is this winter, correct? Will you be able to find an escort in such a short time span? My sister asked, worried. I would indeed have to find a Lice Gang boy to escort me before my graduation ceremony. Otherwise, I would need to ask my uncle or grandfather to escort me. I would at the very least like to find someone who will boost my image, but I cannot see that being uncomplicated. I have asked Lady Helmina for her assistance and shall be attempting to interact with Lice Gang nobles as much as possible. Lady Helmina, did Father not forbid you from speaking to her, given that she has a Lice Gang mother? Have you been keeping in contact with her regardless? My sister probed, looking at me with exasperation. I could already feel my face flushing. Despite the orders Mother and Father had given me, I was still secretly friends with Lady Helmina. She is such a good person, I did not want to cut her off due to the circumstances of adults. Plus, our friendship remains only in the classrooms of the Royal Academy. I am not doing anything that will inconvenience our family. I avoided eye contact as I gave my excuses, though I knew they would not change the fact that I had disobeyed my parents. Still, it is thanks to Lady Helmina that I was able to publicly show that I am on good terms with the Lice Gangs during the Hearthbill assembly. All's well that ends well, would you not agree? Mother and I had only been able to associate positively with the Lice Gangs because Lady Helmina and her mother had been willing to sit with us. I deeply regret that my marriage has put undue pressure on you, so I am relieved to know you have at least some connection with the Lice Gangs. I feel as if my burden has been lessened somewhat, my sister said with an apologetic smile. I smiled and turned. There's still time for me to find an escort, and matters of engagement did not have to be settled anytime soon. I could wait until the balance of power had settled before making any concrete decisions. My sister and I each had unique hurdles to overcome as a consequence of the drastic change in the duchy's political state, so I understood her feelings and remorse well. Though that is not to say the balance of power may not change yet again right after my own wedding. Faction politics were decided by the Ob and those around him. All we could do was move with the waves and strive to secure as solid a position for ourselves as possible. We quietly sipped our tea, feeling bad for one another. Neither of us elected to speak, but our silence was not an awkward one either. Rather, it was one of compassion, as we each gave the other time to calm down. Crystal, please do tell me about the Hearthbill assembly, my sister asked again, setting down her cup and smiling as if attempting to wash away the previous mood. At a tea party yesterday, there was a woman who proudly spoke of everything there having been fresh and new. The others who attended all expressed favored agreement, yet no one would explain what fresh, new things they were referring to. Is that not cruel? The tea party my sister spoke of was one attended primarily by those who had also attended the Hearthbill assembly, so she had ended up feeling extremely alone. This news did not come as much of a surprise. Both Lady Helmina and I would admittedly become just as heated with excitement when we recalled Lord Ferdinand playing the harpspiel, and there had been so many novel aspects to the tea party that those not in the know would struggle to comprehend even simplified explanations. I can hardly blame those other women. There was so much at the tea party that even those of us who were in attendance still do not understand. I am not sure how I could even begin to describe them in a way that would make sense to an outsider. "Oh my, you are saying exactly what they said," my sister commented with an exaggerated frown. A chuckle escaped me. "It's true, words alone struggle to suffice, and there is much we are obligated to keep secret from those who did not attend. There are a few examples here within our helm that I could show you, however, perhaps those would be easier for you to understand." I instructed my attendant to retrieve my box, inside of which was all the treasures I had obtained during that secret tea party. The first item I took out was one half of a ticket. Unlike most tea parties, we did not receive invitations. Instead, we needed to purchase these things called tickets to participate, I explained. We were shown a list of seats and allowed to choose where we wished to sit, rather than the organizer directing us. My sister listened to me with wide eyes, finding each revelation more shocking than the last. "Does that mean seats were decided with no consideration of status and faction?" she asked, a hand over her mouth. Indeed, the tickets were separated into tiers based on price, and one could sit in any of the seats assigned to their particular tier. The seats closer to where Lord Ferdinand was playing were more expensive, and those further away were cheaper. The seating chart had also contained the names of those who had already purchased their tickets, so one could even intentionally avoid those they did not wish to be near. That truly was a remarkable idea. According to Lady Helmina, Lady Florencia took a seat far from the stage to emphasize that one could sit wherever they liked. Her table had only members from her own faction, but at a neighboring table sat members of another faction, and they did seem to greet and frequently converse with one another. Mother and I had purchased our tickets somewhat late, so we had been unable to sit close to Lady Florencia. Instead, we had taken Lady Helmina's offer for us to buy seats next to hers, allowing us the opportunity to listen to the music together. If attendees were able to sit wherever they pleased, were there many members of the Veronica faction near the front? For this performance, Lady Elvira made sure to position last gang nobles at the front so that Lord Ferdinand would not be disturbed. "That is a relief," my sister said with a smile. "Lord Ferdinand received such poor treatment from Lady Veronica. It's good to know that he was shown such consideration." "Thank you. At least some people are nice to him, besides Lady Elvira and her family." Despite being an Archduke candidate, Lord Ferdinand had been cruelly antagonized even while attending the Royal Academy, having to endure the students and their attendants following Lady Veronica's orders. My sister was familiar with many incidents that had resulted from this, and she was relieved to know Lady Elvira had taken action to protect him. Upon our arrival at the tea party, attendants checked our tickets and guided us to our chosen seats. They then cut a ticket in half, see? Look along this edge here. I wasn't sure what they had opted to take one half of our tickets, but they had. Sweets called cookies and pound cake were served at the Harpspiel Assembly, I continued. Lady Rosamond created the recipes for both, and they have been making frequent appearances at the tea parties hosted by members of the Lady Florencia faction. "I am told they are quite unique and delicious," my sister said with a wistful sigh. I chuckled mischievously as I took out a bundle of cloth. "And here are cookies made with tea leaves, said to be Lord Ferdinand's personal preference. They were sold after the performance as souvenirs. Would you care to try one?" I took one of the carefully preserved cookies and handed it to my sister. She took it with great interest before taking a small, swift bite. "The sweetness is sugar, perhaps?" she asked. "It's not too sweet, though. I feel as though I could eat them forever." "That faint sweetness goes perfectly with the crisp, crunchy texture, wouldn't you agree? I find myself reaching for them more often than I would care to admit, but I am careful to pace myself such that I might savor the memories for the day." I picked up a cookie for myself and placed it on my plate. Despite my best efforts to savor the taste, it was gone in no time at all. I was taking care to eat only one a day, but there were already but 2 cookies remaining. "The harpsichord playing of that day flashes to my mind whenever I eat one of these cookies," I noted. "I have an important ritual for consuming them." "Oh, please do elaborate," my sister said, looking at me with amusement. I next took the programming sheet out from the box. The front was decorated with an illustration of an unusual style that relied on thick black lines and white space, creating an image of a man playing the harpspiel. Beneath him were the names of the songs that had been played that day, as well as their lyrics. My sister frowned a little as her eyes went across the paper. "Sister, this here programming lists all the songs that were played at the event," I explained. "Many sheets identical to this were made to market a new for-profit industry known as printing. I always gaze upon the lyrics written upon the show sheet while eating the cookies, replaying the recital in my mind. I closed my eyes, recalling the heavenly notes of the harpspiel as the sweetness of the cookie danced across my palate. I didn't recognize any of these songs. Observe the name of the composer. Lady Rosamond is written for each one, see? Lady Rosamond composed them while Lord Ferdinand and Rosina arranged them. Who is this Rosina? Lady Rosamond's personal musician, I presume. They are most likely songs that Lady Rosamond asked her musician to compose. It was hard to imagine someone as young as she composing this many songs. It would made far more sense to assume she was receiving credit for the work of a musician. That was not particularly uncommon. With the expectations these songs and suites are no doubt going to create, I expect Lady Rosamund is going to be under a lot of pressure during her debut, I said. I must say, though, those were all quite excellent. This one in particular, this love song dedicated to Geduld, practically exuded artistic talent. Lord Ferdinand playing a love song? I truly would have loved to hear that. Back in the Royal Academy, I had resorted to sneakily eavesdropping while he practiced, but even then, his playing was so masterful that my heart swooned with each strum. My sister had attended the Royal Academy alongside Lord Ferdinand, meaning she had listened to his playing before, but the Harpsichord Assembly was my first time. It was there that I was immediately convinced he had received a blessing from Kuntziel, the goddess of art. There was no other way to explain the divinity with which he played. A great number of magic tools were used so that Lord Ferdinand's voice reverberated throughout the hall. I speak with all honesty when I say it felt as though he were whispering directly into my ear. I still find that funny. I could see the goddess of spring dancing before my very eyes. I imagine many even felt the arrival of Blonde for the goddess of sprouts. I know the feeling well. He truly does have the playing skills to entice even a princess, my sister said, nodding to herself and laughing. I cannot say whether it was due to the romantic nature of the song or Lord Ferdinand's sultry voice, but women were falling unconscious on the spot. Keep this between us, but Mother was no exception. Truly? Yes. Also, while our reason for attending was to change our faction, we spent far too much money. Mother was not very motivated at first, but by the end of the love song, both she and I had more or less collapsed onto our table. We were in such a state that we were almost escorted out by the knights. It was only because we rushed to compose ourselves and professed that we were fine that they allowed us to stay. I then went on to explain how a number of women hadn't been quite so fortunate, ultimately needing to be carried from the venue. Exasperated look. To think she would faint in such a public place. It was an embarrassing failure for a proper lady, but no woman who had participated would ever describe this particular fainting spell as such. The air carried such intense excitement that not a soul could be blamed for passing out. It truly was a special time, I said. Everyone resorted to gripping an empty face stone beneath the table to contain their storm of emotions. I myself was surprised to find that I was impassioned enough to fill my face stone entirely. We all carried empty face stones for matters of emergency, but it was rare for a person to actually feel the need to use one. It was standard to simply contain one's storm of emotions with the mind. I could see why those of us who did not participate struggled to understand, my sister said. The Harpsichord Assembly had not been a standard affair during which everyone had put on a polite facade. It was a gathering where the attendees wore their hearts in their sleeves, exposing their feelings to the world. It was hard to explain this to those who had not participated, however, because doing so was the same as exposing one's embarrassing history. Only those who had shared the joy of the heated event could understand and talk about it at length. Toward the end, the Ob rushed over and played the harpsichord alongside Lord Ferdinand. It was my first time hearing him play also, and I must say, he was very good. The music became heavier and fancier with them both playing at once. They played a well-known Sir Hymn, and we all sang along. It felt as though all the attendees became one in that moment. United in our excitement, I wish to experience it again one day if possible. And now I wish to as well, my sister said with an envious sigh. Allow me to show you something else, dear sister, that I would show to no one. To no other. These two must remain known only to those who participated, and they are my treasures. I took out another bundle of cloth from the box and slowly unwrapped it. Oh my, these are illustrations of Lord Ferdinand. What is the meaning of this? Should Lady Veronica know about these? Or hear about these? Our house will... Yes, she is gone now. My sister gazed upon the illustrations, unable to contain the smile that had risen on her face. I knew well that my sister had admired Lord Ferdinand from afar when they attended the Royal Academy. She would tell me about him quite regularly, speaking at immense length of his skill with the harpsichord and his awe-inspiring dinner victories. These illustrations were created with the new printing technology I mentioned. They are amazing, beautiful even, wouldn't you agree? They capture Lord Ferdinand impeccably, whether it be his perfect eyes, his inquisitive brow, or his countless other handsome features. I recalled the recital in my mind countless times while gazing upon these. I set the 3 illustrations down on the table, taking care not to crease or dirty them. I had ordered ornate frames so that I could display them around our home, but the order would take some time to finish. I needed to treasure and preserve them until then. Lady Helmina informed me about this. It seems printing is a new technology that... I was very impressed when I saw so many copies of the same document, but I originally did not understand the value in pushing the industry to the point that donations were required to sustain it. When Lady Helmina had purchased the programming before the recital, I thought only that if one wanted copies of the same document, they could simply hire as many scholars as necessary. Indeed, printing may be useful now while we are suffering from a shortage of personnel, but when there are many scholars, one would need only procure their services. Is this not stealing work from lay scholars lacking in mana? Unlike my sister, I had not thought to consider the lay nobles, but I imagined many other nobles also failed to see the point in spending so much on the printing industry. When I saw these illustrations after watching Lord Ferdinand perform, however, I stopped thinking that way. Being able to produce so many exact copies of something is of the utmost importance. No scholar will be able to perfectly reproduce this illustration, no? Ordering art would usually result in a significant waiting period, and the artist could not sell copies of the same picture to multiple people at once. And yet, so many of us sharing the same illustrations was superb. It emphasized our shared memories. In short, there are many copies of these illustrations, my sister said. Indeed, 100 perfect copies of each illustration were sold at the tea party, all made by printing. As I'm sure you can guess, they all sold out. My sister longingly gazed upon the illustrations on the table before looking up at me with a steely expression. "Crystal, please do give me one," she said. "Then I will also be able to join the discussions at tea parties." "I am afraid I cannot do that, dear sister." "But you have 3! Can you truly not part with just one? I too yearn for an illustration of Lord Ferdinand." I know well that my sister had fleshed for Lord Ferdinand back in her Royal Academy days, and one of these illustrations would prove a valuable weapon for her to participate in tea party discussions, despite her having been unable to attend the Hearthstone assembly herself. However, the 3 illustrations sitting atop the table were all unique, and I had promised Mother that I would preserve them until the frames arrived. It was not my place to lend them away without permission, and given how sharply Mother's eyes had gleamed when she battled the crowd to purchase them, it was hard to imagine she would ever allow them to leave the estate. I am keeping these safe for Mother, so I cannot give them away to anyone, not even you. Each one costs 5 large silvers. 5 large silvers for an illustration lacking color? I am surprised Father would allow Mother to purchase not just 1, but 3. He was furious, of course. He would not believe she would spend so much at a single tea party. Mother was only able to calm him down by saying it was a necessary cost to shift our faction to more stable territory. I explained Father was the one who had ordered Mother to attend the tea party in the first place, so he had not been able to argue any further. Oh my, but does that argument carry weight when one remembers that Mother grew heated enough to fall unconscious? My, that is a secret between you and me, dear sister. Recall that I gifted you one of my precious cookies. Those were available for purchase only at the Hearthstone assembly. My sister gave a sigh that was equal parts impressed and exasperated. She went to speak, only to be interrupted as an ordonnance flew into the room. Who could this be, I wondered aloud. The ordonnance flew around the room once before settling in front of me. Lady Crystal, it's Helena, came a bright, excited voice. Lady Avara is holding a tea party 10 days from now to discuss the Hearthstone assembly. She said to invite all those who bought copies of each of the illustrations. Please do join us. It will be a positively splendid occasion. The bird repeated its message 3 times before reverting into a yellow face, which then clattered onto the table. You earned Lady Avara's invitation by purchasing all the illustrations? My sister asked, her mouth agape. I suppose Father truly cannot scold Mother for it. I nodded. Sister, I will attempt to persuade Lady Avara and the others as best I can. Perhaps they will hold another Hearthstone assembly. Crystal, I would not be able to attend without permission from my husband. I ask only that you see whether they can arrange for those like me to purchase the illustrations independently. 10 days after that lively tea party with my sister, I attended another tea party with Mother, this one hosted by Lady Avara. Our intention was not only to discuss the Hearthstone performance, however, we were gathering to extol Lord Ferdinand for all his virtues. It was an irreplaceably delightful time during which we all reminisced and allowed our fervent excitement to show. It was only natural then that there would be calls for another Hearthstone assembly to be held. Upon seeing our enthusiasm, however, Lady Avara's expression clouded over, and she looked across us all with sorrow in her eyes. I regret this more than anyone, but I cannot hold another recital. Nor can I sell any more illustrations of Lord Ferdinand, she announced. Lady Avara went on to report that she had received Lord Ferdinand's assistance under the promise that it would be a one-time event. To make matters worse, Ehrenfest had leaked to him the existence of the illustrations, which in turn caused Lord Ferdinand to forbid Lady Rosamine from ever printing them again. How terrible! To think we would be thrust into a pit of despair so soon after being taught the splendor of printing and donating so much. It seemed that my feelings of displeasure toward Ehrenfest would not be resolved any time soon. Well, that was actually Lord Ferdinand's doing. If he had known he was going to do that anyway. Okay. Lampert, Where My Path Leads. A short story originally written as a sales bonus for Part 3, Volume 3. Lampert is given the chance to stop serving Wilfrid, who is at risk of disinheritance, and decides to consult his family on the matter. Which path is the right one for him? Author's note. Eckert's scathing remarks a la Ferdinand went through several revisions over the course of writing this chapter. They're originally so much worse than, so what you see here is actually pretty tame. Oh, I want to see the originals. I want to see the originals so much. I returned home after sending my mother a very abrupt ordonnance, but she welcomed me back without so much as a single question. I gazed around searching for Cornelius. Lamprecht, if you're looking for Cornelius, he has already eaten dinner and said goodnight and returned to his room, Mother noted. Did you wish to speak with him? I shook my head. No, just with you. This had to do with Rosemine, so it wasn't unrelated to Cornelius, but I didn't want my little brother seeing me so confused and uncertain. Mother sighed and beckoned me over. Lamprecht, come to my room. We are best to converse there, are we not? My return had come so suddenly that my room hadn't yet been prepared for me. I suggested that Mother and I wait until it was ready, but she had coolly refused and suggested that we go to her room instead. Upon our arrival, Mother ordered her attendant to prepare us some cups. Then, once we had everything we would need, she cleared the room and started to pour us both some wine, filling our cups with the amber liquid. I am always with Lord Carstad when I receive your report, so it has been quite a long time since we have been alone like this, Lamprecht, Mother said. I accepted the cup she offered me, and a rich, nostalgic scent tickled my nose. This was the first wine I'd ever drunk, and the last time I'd shared some with Mother had been when I made the decision to serve Lord Wilfrid. This discussion will not be too different from our last, I said. Oh? Have you been relieved of duty already? No, was my firm response as it stood. Being removed from Lord Wilfrid's service was equivalent to being labeled incompetent by Riarda or Rosemine. It was an extreme dishonor for a noble, which was why I could allow no room for doubt. However, I continued, Oswald told me in no uncertain terms that he would not mind my resignation. What I chose to do next will have a considerable impact on our house. So I thought it best to return and discuss my options with you. Mother cast her eyes down briefly, then silently indicated that I should continue. I took a sip of wine and sighed. Right, where to begin? I expect you have already heard this from Father, Cornelius, and Lady Florencia, but Lord Wilfrid has changed dramatically since he spent a day in Rosemine's shoes at the temple. This has been especially obvious to those of us serving him. It was only 10 or so days ago when our main duty was to keep him from running away, but now he works harder than ever. So I have been told, Mother replied, bringing her cup to her lips, but his newfound work ethic is the bare minimum expected of a child of the Archduke, and he is still a long way from being considered acceptable. His lack of an education must be because Lady Veronica desired a puppet ob whom she could control effortlessly. Lady Florencia must bemoan how low he has been experimented to sink. I could not deny Mother's words. Lady Veronica had only ever scolded Lord Wilfrid when he disobeyed her orders. Not once had she spoken out against him neglecting his studies or being unreasonable with his retainers. In fact, when we had tried to lecture him ourselves, she had very harshly warned us not to criticize the future Archduke. Lady Veronica instructed me not to defy my lord under any circumstances, I said, and with such yes-men in his service, Lord Wilfrid still might fail to prove himself even with his new education. Oswald has decided not to take any new retainers, correct? Correct. Lord Wilfrid is already struggling with his new lifestyle. Surrounding him with unfamiliar faces would only make things worse. Plus, if he also does end up being disinherited, then those retainers would end up with black marks on their records. Oswald therefore decided that splitting the workload between fewer people is ideal. Out of everyone in Lord Wilfrid's service, Oswald was undeniably working the hardest. He was having to manage the distribution of work and keep the rest of us on track, even as we lost more and more people. I continued, given the likelihood that Lord Wilfrid will end up being disinherited, I think minimizing the collateral damage is wise. And considering his current state, we cannot expect any Lysgang nobles to want to enter his service. We are trying to keep this as private as we can, but tensions are always going to be high. I think Oswald is making a very reasonable decision. Maybe then, but not now. He's kind of, smacking himself. He's kind of making it so that Wilfrid's going to fail in the end. Not now, but it was later. There were some Lysgang nobles among the retainers Lady Veronica had collected, but most of us had been intimidated into serving Lord Wilfrid, and the treatment we received hadn't been exceptional. The others had all quit as soon as Lady Veronica was detained, meaning I was the only Lysgang remaining. It does appear that Oswald is doing his best, but what of the other retainers, Mother asked? I am worried about Rosemine. It seems very unlikely that retainers of the Veronica faction, which has spent so long oppressing Lysgang nobles, would obey the ways and words of my daughter. No matter what Oswald might say in support of her, they are bound to take issue. Am I wrong? Oswald takes issue with her later. We see that a lot in, dang it, what was it? Not this latest volume, but the volume before that, I think. Or maybe it was the beginning of the volume. I don't know. I averted my eyes, instead focusing on the wine in my cup. The other retainers had vented their frustration to me, and their words resurfaced to my mind. Lord Wolfried was considered a source of shame for the archducal couple, owing to the lackluster education he'd received from Lady Veronica and the poor behavior of his retainers, but these shortcomings had only reached the public after Lord Ferdinand and Rosamund exposed them. Their actions had put Lord Wolfried at risk of being disinherited and his retainers at risk of being relieved of duty. Of course, Lord Wolfried was now working hard to avoid such an undesirable fate, but his efforts did nothing to stop Rosamund from wandering in, besting him in every way imaginable, and then chastising everyone in earshot. She would say that he wasn't yet doing enough, that he was letting his guard down too much, and that his retainers were still being too soft on him. Yep. Many of the retainers disagreed with these criticisms, as one would expect when they were used to supporting their lord unconditionally. They wondered how Rosamund could be so wrong about Lord Wolfried when whom they thought was progressing by leaps and bounds, and started to wonder whether she knew her place as a lowly adopted daughter. Someone needs to smack them. A lot. As you expect, Mother, those who were forced to leave Lord Wolfried's service direct their frustrations out not at Lord Ferdinand, who brought up disinheritance to begin with, or at Lady Florencia, who executed the dismissals, but at Rosamund. The retainers' futures were ultimately decided by Lady Florencia, but Riarda was the one scrutinizing their every move. As a result, those who were relieved of duty often believed that Rosamund was to blame. They did not understand me when I said that Rosamund is trying to save Lord Wolfried from disinheritance, I continued. Although they knew deep down that I speak the truth, they cannot bring themselves to accept it. And Rosamund is such an easy target for their ire. Some even claim that Lord Ferdinand conspires to remove Lord Wolfried from his position as the next Archduke and install her in his place. On the outside, on the surface, that would be the best move. But deep down, Rosamund even knows that she would be crappy at being an Archduchess. As I recounted the situation to my mother, I realized just how much Lady Veronica's influence still colored Lord Wolfried's retainers. Many continued to dismiss Rosamund's advice as unthinkably rude and quietly admonish her for speaking out against Ehrenfest's next Ob. Even I had been imprinted with the idea that Lord Wolfried was better suited to rule than any of the Archduke's other children. I warned Cornelius to limit how often Rosamund visits Lord Wolfried, hoping to spare her some disdain, but he refused, saying that her prying was at Lady Florencia's request. I thought there was no need for Rosamund to endure so much hatred if she was just acting on behalf of Lord Ferdinand and trying to undermine her brother, but Cornelius had informed me that this wasn't the case. Cornelius just recently moved to the castle as Rosamund's apprentice guard knight, I said, so he might still be blind to the dangers of malice. If you were to warn him as well, perhaps he would reconsider. Mother nodded in agreement. I personally do not care whether Lord Wolfried gets disinherited, so I share your desire to keep Rosamund from becoming even more hated, but... I squeezed my eyes shut upon hearing my mother's complete disregard for my lord. Her blunt phrasing reminded me of Lord Ferdinand. Lord Wolfried was working so hard, but Lady Veronica's disposition had made it painfully clear how few people actually wanted him to become the next Archduke. Lady Florencia was overjoyed that her son had finally been returned to her care, Mother continued, and it was Rosamund's intervention that has given Lord Wolfried a chance to redeem himself. Trying to remove her from the equation now would only complicate things. I had not been in the dining hall when Lord Ferdinand proposed the disinheritance, so I knew nothing of what they had discussed or how they had decided on the terms of their agreement. The most I had heard was the Ob's declaration and a report from Oswald. Mother shook her head in disappointment. Those serving Lord Wolfried should want to protect their lord above all else, yet they so blatantly opposed Lady Florencia's wishes and disrespect the girl doing the most to save him. In a just world, they would be assisting her and expressing nothing but gratitude for her efforts. I quickly opened my mouth to protest, not oblivious to the fact that she had included me in her criticism. It wasn't like we were all dissatisfied with Rosamund. Such griping only came from the people who had been relieved of duty. We aren't all ignorant of the work that Rosamund is doing for our sake, I said. Oswald and those who were in the dining hall understand. That's precisely why Oswald told me I don't need to continue tolerating fools incapable of seeing the reality of the situation. Unlike the other retainers, I can be of value to the archducal couple without serving Lord Wolfried. As I was Rosamund's older brother, some of the anger directed at her ended up falling on me as well. Oswald had noticed this, and that had spurred him to suggest that I resign. At this time, when everyone needed to work together, he likely considered a member of the Liesgame faction such as I to be a troublesome outsider, but perhaps he had other motivations as well. In any case, I was sure he wanted me to leave. He was already struggling with the shortage of retainers, so he would not have suggested otherwise. I expect my decision to have a significant impact on our house, so what do you think, Mother? I asked, eyeing her carefully. She placed a hand gently on her cheek, contemplated my question, and looked at me head-on. With Lady Veronica's influence growing weaker by the day, there's no longer any need for you to protect me, Lampreth. You may do as you wish. Mother, I was passionately against one of my own children going to Lady Veronica, but you defied my wishes and went anyway, did you not? though that was in large part due to how powerless I was. There was a strange smile on her face. She was my mother, but stopping an adult from becoming someone's retainer was no easy feat, especially when their service was requested and their new lord or lady held a position of power. There had been nothing she could do. I can only imagine how much abuse Lady Veronica made you endure on my behalf, she continued, but no longer. My decision to serve Lord Wolfred had come after my older brother Eckert refused. I had felt it was my duty to protect my mother and younger brother, but that had not stopped Mother from worrying about me. It was only now that I realized this. Thus, whether you continue to serve Lord Wolfred or consider your duty as his retainer complete and choose to resign, I will not mind. But please know this, if you decide to stay and he fails his winter debut, it will mar your good name. Although my family could protect me, there would be no way for me to erase the reality that my lord had been disinherited. Mother looked at me with worry and told me to think carefully about my future. It was a silent plea for me to resign. Mother continued, if you wish to serve Lady Rosemine instead, Lord Karstad and I could recommend you. She is lacking adult guard knights in particular, so you would be taken on immediately. I crossed my arms and thought, of all the Archduke's children, Rosemine held the lowest status due to having been raised in the temple and adopted into the Archduke family. The Liasgangs, mother's and father's relatives, were sure to acquire more influence going forward, and Rosemine currently had very few retainers, so I was sure to be accepted into her service if I expressed an interest. I hadn't considered serving Rosemine, I said, but it would be nice to continue serving the Archducal family. I need to consider my marriage prospects as well. In the Royal Academy, when trying to make a good impression with the father of one's bride-to-be, it was much better to be a guard knight who had found a new lady to serve than a former retainer who had become a knight after his lord was disinherited. Mother blinked at my remark, then her dark eyes narrowed. Lampert, I would support whichever path you choose, but if you are going to follow your heart, think carefully about what it means for an archnoble to become a retainer of the archducal family. Lampert, father said, calling me into his office when I went for training the next day. Your mother told me everything. Mother aside, more or less everyone in my immediate family was a knight. It was funny how we found it easier to meet up at the training grounds than at home. Avara said you could decide for yourself and presented you with a chance to serve Rosemine, father remarked, summarizing my conversation from the day before. Do you intend to resign as Lord Wolfred's retainer? His eyes were as sharp as Mother's last night. I could tell that a single misspoken word would prove fatal, so I stuck out my chin out and said, No. My fellow retainers may not think highly of my being Rosemine's brother, but I am not yet resolved to resign. It was a rather ambiguous response, delivered while carefully watching my father's reaction. He sighed and then said in a hushed voice, If you are still undecided, let me give you some advice. I am opposed to you becoming Rosemine's guard knight. Wait, but why? Yeah, I'm kind of wondering that myself, but why, I asked, struggling to understand where this was coming from. I don't think you're built for it. Lord Ferdinand is her guardian here and in the temple, so you'd be serving him indirectly. Oh, yeah. You might not be built to handle that level of expectation he has. Kind of think of Eckert as an example of how his expectations are, and you can kind of gather whether you will be able to hit that or not. Just as Lady Veronica had overseen Lord Wolfred controlling his education and directing his retainers, Lord Ferdinand was playing a very intimate role in Rosemine's education, since she had spent such a long time in the temple. I recalled the time he had very lightly crushed me, and I felt a chill ran down my spine. I'd be serving him indirectly? Is that really true? As I stood in the daze, Father continued, Rosemine's retainers need to do more than just enter the temple. They visit the orphanage and workshop often, and attend meetings with merchants. According to Daniel, her guard knights are also technically subordinates of Lord Ferdinand, since they assist him with paperwork and report to him on a daily basis. I am hesitant about you becoming Rosemine's guard knight when he deems you as incompetent as your lord. Oh, yeah. I hadn't thought about that at all. In the temple, I only did math work to save Rosemine the trouble. It wasn't normal for guard knights to carry out duties like that each and every day. It caught me completely off guard. Plus, Father continued, when you accompany Rosemine on religious matters, you may need to perform some duties in her place depending on her health. You may need to eat with commoners when circling the farming villages, and you may need to sleep on bedding mat most would never consider fit for a noble. What? Retainers of the Archducal family are mimicking the priests and dining with commoners? I find that hard to believe, but is that really what's expected of her guard knights? To me, it was unthinkable to imagine a retainer of the Archducal family dining with the commoners of a farming village. As a noble, you may find it hard to imagine, but that is what is expected of those who serve Rosemine, the High Bishop. Or at least that's what Eckert said when Lord Ferdinand assigned him to accompany Rosemine. Apparently, Eckert had accepted the task at once, eager to be useful to Lord Ferdinand. It was unbelievable. If you wish to serve her despite all those deterrents, then I won't stop you, Father said. But you should know that much like Lord Ferdinand, Rosamund is unique in all sorts of ways. She is not someone who can be served without first forming immense resolve, being completely accepting of changing times, and having no intention of self-promotion whatsoever. So a person like you, a person who still clings to Lady Veronica's old methods, will find it impossible to be her retainer. What do you mean by that, Father? Is there something about Rosamund I don't know? He placed a hand on his forehead. Do you think there isn't? Clearly he had no intention of telling me Rosamund's secret. Of course not! Of course he's not going to tell you that! They don't trust you enough for that. Lamprecht, now that Rosamund is the Alp's adopted daughter, Elvira and I can't make any large moves. We must obey Lord Ferdinand in the temple and the Archducal couple in the castle, and naturally Rosamund's education is entirely different from Lord Wilfrid's. It was exactly as Father said. Serving under Rosamund wouldn't be as simple as accompanying her to the temple and eating nice food. I would also need to help her assist Lord Ferdinand, guard her during religious ceremonies, and above all else, visit farming towns and spend time with commoners. The job would require me to put some distance between myself and the rest of noble society, which I hadn't anticipated whatsoever. Well, Lamprecht, think you'll want to serve as Rosamund's guard knight? I shook my head and replied, no, you're right, it's not for me. Then that's all I have to say. Father nodded toward the door so I took my leave, only to find my brother Eckert waiting outside. Oh, let's see how this goes. I wonder what No, I'm really curious. What is he going to say that would have been tame in comparison to what he would have said? My family really was worried about me. He gestured for me to follow him, so I gave him a half smile and obeyed. Feeling a little embarrassed, I said, everyone sure is being a worrywart, but my small remark was received with a very stern glare. I'm not worried about you. Ooh. Eckert clearly wasn't one for familial warmth. Familial warmth, my ass. Y'all have not even given Rosamund a hug since she started being your daughter. God. Only one who gives her hugs is Ferdinand. And that's even stopped lately. He's not even there anymore. A short while passed before my brother spoke again. So what's your plan? I am not suited for serving Rosamund, so I am unsure what to do. Eckert cleared his throat, then looked straight at me. I don't care what you do, but it's about time you stop taking half measures. Ooh. What? I widened my eyes. Eckert's words were like mother's, but with any semblance of compassion stripped away. Brother, isn't that a bit harsh? After you refused Lady Veronica's request, I took on the mantle to protect our family and have served Lord Wilfrid ever since. I would hardly consider that a half measure. You seem to be under the misapprehension that I chose to refuse Lady Veronica. It was quite the opposite. I thought that serving Lord Wilfrid would put me in a better position to assassinate her and help Lord Ferdinand out of the temple, but Father got in the way. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me that he would. Yeah, considering what we've seen in that one little part I put for Volume 8, about how he wanted to go in and kill every single person in Arensbach that had, tried to kill Ferdinand, it doesn't surprise me anymore. Even though Eckert was furious with Lady Veronica, Father had swiftly intervened to keep Eckert from realizing his scheme. He had stopped Eckert from doing anything for the family, restricted his access to the castle, and kept him busy with Knight's Order paperwork and the training of new recruits. It had never occurred to me before, but Father really must have been struggling, for as long as I can remember he had laughed Eckert off as a strange case, for his desire to keep serving Lord Ferdinand even after being relieved of duty. The emotional weight of concealing the truth from us all must have been immense. If you are judging me by your own standards, brother, then I can see why you consider me so half-baked, I said. His definition of loyalty was on an entirely different level. Yeah, because his name's sworn to Ferdinand. Of course he has to be all in, essentially, considering that's his life at stake there. Mother and Oswald have both said that I am free to stop serving Lord Wilfrid. I am simply considering the changing trends and trying to decide which path to follow. Eckert narrowed his blue eyes at me, looking completely exasperated. You really don't get it, do you? Though it may sound nice, considering the changing trends is the fate of lay nobles and men nobles who spend their lives cowering in the protection of those with power. That isn't an acceptable existence for an archnoble, let alone one with archducal blood. Just how much have Lady Veronica's drones corrupted you? His words snapped me back to reality. Oh, no, I really want to know what he would have said. Girl, if you're going to put this out there, give us like a interview that says what you would have put in there instead, but you toned it down. I want to know. His words snapped me back to reality. Like so many of the Lies gangs, I was an archnoble, but most of the nobles supporting Lady Veronica were men nobles. Being alone in their presence for so long had started to warp my way of thinking. Yeah. You spent so long as Lady Veronica's lapdog, unable to chastise your lord, and docile to the point that you hindered his growth. And now, instead of supporting him as he works to avoid disinheritance, you're treating this offer from Oswald as a lucky break and trying to use your family's power to escape. How is that not a half measure? My brother's words cut me deep. After telling everyone to acknowledge how hard Lord Wolfrid was working to improve, here I was prioritizing my future and trying to abandon him. I was stunned into silence, which prompted Eckert to continue. Mother might have praised your selfless endurance, but is abandoning one's lord in his time of need and searching for someone to replace him not the worst offense an Archducal Guard Knight can make? Or can commit? Yeah, I have to agree. If you do something so callous, who would trust you to enter their service? From an objective standpoint, my intentions really were unforgivable, but I wasn't going to roll over and take my brother's abuse. I wouldn't say it's abuse. Yeah, that's tame. Considering he could have said it a lot worse. So you say, but my lord doesn't need me. There's conflict between the retainers, so Oswald, it isn't up to Oswald to decide whether you're needed. At the very least, before you resign, ask your lord what he actually desires. He started rubbing his temples like Lord Ferdinand so often did. Yeah, he's taking after Ferdinand on that. You might not realize it, Lampert, but you're stupid. And you don't think things through. I was taken aback by how cruel he was being, but then he pointed at himself and said, the same goes for me. No matter how much I rack my brain and try to follow theories, no good idea ever comes to me. We've been a family of mules ever since grandfather, so instead, you need to rely on your guts. Out of my siblings and me, Eckert resembled our grandfather the most. He really seemed to live on his wild, animalistic instincts. I didn't trust my gut anywhere near as much, but still, I was given a choice. Who do you think you'll be better off serving, he asked, Lord Wolfrid or Rosemine? I already knew my answer, and with that in mind, I went straight to Lord Wolfrid's chambers. Oswald and the other retainers were surprised to see me, though I paid them no mind, while Lord Wolfrid showed me his to-do list with a proud grin. What do you think, Lampert? I completed all these tasks. Oh, that's wonderful. You certainly are making fast progress. It was so apparent that he was trying his best, especially in comparison to the days we had spent chasing him all over the place. Yeah. At that moment, I was struck with a genuine desire to support him for as long as I could. I'm working hard, he announced. You should work hard too and improve your math. Lord Ferdinand gave you a scolding before, right? Lord Wolfrid, I said in jest, do you have a need for guard knights who aren't really good at math? Obviously, guard knights just need to be strong. Lead them out to scholars. But you should at least work as hard as me. Can you read numbers? I can do that much. Lord Wolfrid chuckled, then went to see Professor Moritz. Today he was going to be using cards to practice his letters. He did need me. He had told me without as much as a second thought. Lampert, Oswald said, is there any meaning to you continuing to serve Lord Wolfrid? His eyes were filled with concern, but now I understood why. He didn't want the stress of a guard knight who could quit at any moment. As the only lives-getting noble here, it had been foolish of me not to make a better effort to prove myself. I don't want to do anything that might be considered a half-measure, I replied, looking him straight in the eye. Even if you all shun me, I will support Lord Wolfrid for as long as he desires my service. Oswald gave a small, genuine smile. Those who would shun you have already been relieved of duty. Let us all work our hardest, together. It was on that day, after receiving confirmation that I was needed and that my fellow retainers accepted me, that I truly started to see myself as Lord Wolfrid's guard knight. Yeah, that kind of didn't last long. Considering how it all ended with, a bunch of them getting dismissed, including Oswald. Here we go! Okay, I'm gonna have to probably end it off here, and I will see everybody in the next one.